Evening, folks. It's it's Enki and Imian here, doing my first video. So here's the thing: there is no science spirituality dichotomy. Okay, that's the one thing that really irks me, and that's why I'm doing this video. A lot of people that I speak to are either rational empiricists or irrational spiritualists. Now, the thing that I struggle to understand is why the whole idea of rationalism doesn't fit with spirituality and vice versa. Because from my own understandings, my own research, my own just general experience, the idea of spirituality is what I will call hyper-rational. It's that point where things don't make any sense to the point where they can't help but make sense. If you're looking at spirituality through the lens of a scientific mind like I have, trying to understand the way things work, not necessarily understanding the causes of everything or going into the origin of things, but the way in which it could work hypothetically or theoretically, then you'll find that spirituality is hyper-rational. So to start off, you want to think of the nature of God, just an overarching idea that pretty much all spiritual traditions have, or any path that you're on, whatever path you walk, there's always going to be a god or gods of some kind. So we'll start with that. Now, typically, empiricist scientific minds, they don't buy into the idea of God. They don't buy into the idea of creators or external forces that we can't measure, because they only believe in what they can see, what they can actually experiment with, what they can measure and know for certain. So the idea of God or gods is, one might say, over their heads, really. I mean, I don't want to belittle anybody, because it that would be that would just detract from the whole idea. Empiricists, they want to experience everything, and you can't really, well, in their minds, you can't experience God. You can't measure God. You can't know God or gods, whether you have a monotheistic or polytheistic outlook. That doesn't matter either, because I go into that later on. So the way I rationalize God is that, looking at all of the different traditions throughout history across the world, the creator, there is always one creator above all other things. Even if you've got an entire pantheon of gods, there's a creating force above and beyond them that to most traditions is unknowable, so they don't really include it. But it's that one creating thing that is prevalent in everything else. So you could say that God as a creator isn't just a creator, it's an immanent energy or a force that is in everything. That's why in the Bible it says that God is words to the effect of, I'm just paraphrasing, but for all and in all, or works through all. It's the whole idea that this creating force encompasses everything within itself. It's kind of like an incubator, and all existence, be it organic life, or whether it's rock formations, or energetic vibratory frequencies, or whatever you want to focus on, exists within this kind of bubble of creation. Now, you may as well just say that that's the universe. That is the universe is an energetic bubble, and everything is kind of created within it, and that's why it's expanding, because it's filling with mass, and etc., etc. But if you then take the idea that energy that pervades all existence has its own consciousness and can actually act in accordance with its own will, that's when it goes from simply being the universe to God. That's when you go from being an empiricist to a spiritualist, when you start to make energy conscious. Now, I've looked at Consciousness science. I've looked at energy studies and other such things, quantum theory, and the conclusion that I've come to is that God is an energetic wavelength. He's a form of what Einstein would term subtle energy, that works through everything and governs the way in which absolutely everything in the universe develops and grows and recreates. So again, you see this in the patterns in nature with the phi ratio and everything else. So you look at the mathematics of that, the mathematical representation of this unifying force is the phi ratio. So in that sense, you can look at anything, spirals in animals, in people, in weather systems, plants, the spiral along galaxies, pretty much everything. Even the way in which cells form and replicate and spread out and everything else. You'll see they actually take on the forms of platonic solids, which adhere to the base mathematical principles which arise out of the phi ratio. So at its core, God is simply a unifying energy force. It's you could say it's a mathematical principle, or I should say the mathematical principle is a symbolic representation of that sort of creative energy force. That's how we as human beings kind of rationalize it. That's how we can come to know it or understand it to some rudimentary degree. So if God is conscious energy, that opens up a whole can of worms as to ghosts and demons and angels and all those things can exist in the same vein as what God does, because if you think of a ghost, it's an energetic imprint that's left behind in the physical world by a human presence. Now typically a majority of ghost lore says that a ghost will only stick around if it's got unfinished business or if it's died under extreme circumstances, emotional circumstances. Now our emotions govern our energetic output anyway. The electromagnetic field that's generated by your body, it is governed by your emotions. When you're in a good mood, your energy is like bang, it's out here. It's like really nice smooth wavelengths, and it just kind of ropes everybody else in and everyone starts to feel good. When you're in a bad mood, or if you're in distress or something like that, your energy field is just as big, but it's jagged, spiky, aggressive, and it attacks everything around it. So in that sense, if you've got like a sort of smooth wavelength, which is what is making up your physical reality, it's kind of quite rigid, you got your solid objects and everything else, but then you've got this really spiky energy field that's kind of jabbing into it. It's going to leave little indentations in the fabric of reality. It's like stabbing a piece of clay with a screwdriver. You can leave little indents there. So in that sense, the energetic imprint on the fabric of reality then takes on its own consciousness, which is an echo of the consciousness that governed the physical body, and thus the energy output was also governed by that same consciousness. So you could say a piece of the consciousness attaches itself to the energy, which then stays in the fabric of reality as like an echo of the person. So yeah, ghosts, there you go, ghosts in a nutshell. Conscious energy. Same with demons, same with angels. Angels are it could be regarded as emanations from the primordial one creating force. So like with light, you've got white light hits a prism, breaks off into the seven colours of the spectrum. That's why you have seven primordial creator gods in a majority of laws. You got like the seven planetary deities in the old Hellenic lore and other such things. So in that sense, angels or demons could be seen as emanations out of the one. Now if the one is starting to contemplate its own existence and contemplate the potential for what it could be, that thought process is the prism through which it then breaks itself up into little bits. Now each of those emanations from the one will have its own set of associations. It will have its own set of rules that it lives by, or that it sets for itself, I should say. It will have its own principles as to how it behaves, and therefore when you're looking at polytheism or pantheism of any kind, you'll look at each of the individual deities as an emanation from the one, and you'll say, well, really, that is just the overarching creator God. wearing a mask to perform a certain role, or to govern a certain aspect of life or existence, or whatever you want to look at. So in that sense, any spiritual ideology can be acceptable in the mind of any rational empiricist if you take it in terms of energy. Because, as Nikola Tesla said, if you want to know the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. And that's what I've been doing for the last 10 years, is looking at so many different laws from around the world. The South American law, the Hellenic law, the Norse, the Western Celtic pagans, the Hindus, Buddhism, pretty much everything. Aboriginal law especially. They've got a hell of a lot of stuff encoded into their origin stories, so with the dream time and everything else, which actually is sort of symbolic of what we would call scientific principles of creation. So on that very, very basic level, God and science shouldn't be at loggerheads. You shouldn't have the likes of Richard Dawkins bashing the church, saying, "Oh, it's just a control construct. God is a vicious, petty, childish, capricious God." It's just point scoring, really. So, my ideology is better than yours. It doesn't matter, because in the grand scheme of things, we're all speaking parts of the same truth. So, if you're a scientist, then have a look at spirituality with an open mind and try to think, how would that work? Theoretically, hypothetically, how would that work? If you're a spiritualist looking at science and think that science is really rigid and limited, well, it is, but it's a way that you can take those abstract concepts and condense them into a form that is easily digested by the human mind, because human mind is so limited in its capability at the moment, because we only use about 10 to 15% of our brain capacity, etc., etc. So it may be worth having a look at the more abstract elements of your spiritual path. If you're kind of struggling to come to grips with certain things, then have a look at it through the lens of a scientist and think, well, how does that work? How can I condense that into something that I can process in my frontal conscious mind? But for now, I've rambled on too much. Bottom line, stop arguing, guys. It's all true. Okay, it's all true. And I'm going to do a few more videos in the future with, respect to different spiritual paths, different scientific disciplines, and how they kind of intermix, and how different pantheons are actually all pretty much the same thing. But through the lens of individual experience of a particular culture. So I'll get to that at the time. But for now, thanks for watching, and I shall see you later. Bye.